Imagine the following dramatic scenario. Your son is shot. After lingering in agony for months, he dies in your arms. Not long after, you are diagnosed with a malignant cancer, even though you have never before been seriously sick. Would you suspect a connection? This man was a specialist of internal medicine. He experienced a terrible blow when his son was shot, eventually succumbing after a months-long, agonizing fight for his life. A few weeks later, this doctor was diagnosed with testicular cancer and successfully treated. He did not believe that he was dealing with two unrelated events. He suspected that the shock of his son's misfortune and his subsequent cancer were somehow bound, especially since his wife, who had also never been seriously sick, also developed cancer soon thereafter. Due to his work as a doctor in a Munich cancer ward, he was able to question hundreds of cancer patients who confirmed his suspicions. These hundreds led to tens of thousands of investigated cases that culminated in the discovery of 5 biological natural laws that form the basis of his new medicine. These laws provide a completely new approach to explaining the how and why of disease. In other words, how changes occur in the organism, what course they follow, and what point they serve. At first, he thought that these laws only applied to cancer. Over time, though, he realized that in fact, they causally explain the majority of diseases and symptoms, not only in people, but also in animals. Before turning to this discovery in the next few parts, it is important to first understand a little of the history of this doctor. The spread of his discovery was bound up with the death of his son from the beginning. He was shot on vacation by, of all people, the heir of a monarch, who brought all means to bear in covering up the scandal. Character assassination in the media, bribery, blackmail, death threats. Despite all of this, he feverishly researched his discovery and soon approached his physician colleagues and the university. It seemed to be a discovery of unimaginable proportions. The empathy and understanding he communicated to his patients stood in stark contrast to the disastrous manner in which he informed the outside world of his discovery, earning him many enemies. He was soon accused not only of posing a completely isolated theory, but also that he had ignored the rules of science and had furthermore made massive mistakes of form. Thus, instead of enthusiasm or interest, he earned only ridicule, rejection, and a prompt dismissal. The public review of his discovery he requested in front of a scientific committee was never granted, due to the decades of mutual misunderstanding that followed. Only on a smaller scale were there isolated confirmations of his discovery by various groups of doctors and clinics. Historically, refusing to deal with new discoveries is common when the basic assumptions of a science are called into question and a so-called paradigm shift occurs. This unchecked, violent rejection of a new discovery by the scientific elite is called the Semmelweis reflex. Ignaz Semmelweis, a 19th century Hungarian physician, surgeon, and obstetrician, challenged the medieval assumption that hygiene has no bearing on the course of disease, surgery, or childbirth. Although he scientifically clearly proved his new findings and managed to reduce the infant mortality rate of his patients from over 12% to under 2% by applying simple hygienic measures, most physicians at the time rejected his findings as nonsense. Countless thousands of people had to die before his discovery was recognized and applied. His colleagues even had him committed as a madman, where he died after only a 2-week confinement. Why this digression? Because the rejection of the discoveries presented here seemed to be just such a Semmelweis reflex. However, the extent is far more serious. The name of this doctor is Dr. Hammer. A disaster began to take shape as he was increasingly defamed in the press. In the context of this downward spiral, his medical license was revoked, he was imprisoned, he proposed more and more destructive hypotheses, he was perceived by the public as a madman and retreated into exile. This negative image of Dr. Hammer has the unfortunate consequence of branding all therapists and doctors who embrace his new medicine as crazy, even if they limit their acceptance to the 5 biological natural laws and not his other personal and private views. These terrible experiences have naturally impacted Dr. Hammer, so that it is understandable that his worldview and the way he chose to communicate it changed in ways that now make it difficult to spread his now 30-plus-year-old ingenious discovery. Even if a person is intrigued by the discovery, they often turn from the subject upon learning of Dr. Hammer's political and ideological views. These can sound conspiratorial or even crazy to many people, but irrespective of their truth, they can causally be understood by investigating his incredible life story. Besides, the laws discovered by Dr. Hammer apply regardless of who discovered them. No matter whether a discovery is made by Professor Schmitz or Sophie Meyer, whether the discoverer cheats on his wife or secretly picks her nose, all of that is irrelevant to the discovery. So the easiest way to get started is to focus exclusively on Dr. Hammer's discovery, the 5 biological natural laws of new medicine, abbreviated 5BN, which we shall subsequently explore, because everyone can verify them with a reasonable effort, whereas the other non-medical, controversial statements of Dr. Hammer are difficult to ascertain because of the ambiguities.